NASA moon skeptics, what say you now? So, NASA and Americans go to the moon, but they don't stop on the moon. They go around the moon, and it's a really interesting time. Really, let me just see if I can. I'm gonna pull up something more on this. Go to the NASA website to see. I'm not going to do the Instagram ones on this, but remarkable settings. Let's see. So there's NASA. Now look, people have doubted, the moon landings prior times in the 70s, whenever it was, 60s, whenever it was, and some people think that Earth is flat. Some people think it's a pancake, whatever they think. Some people don't think gravity exists. But here we have the Artemis 2 program, where 4 astronauts aboard the. So this is a live view apparently. Let me just go back here. I mean that must be an animation clearly, but yeah, there's some view there. 4 astronauts aboard the agency's test flight around the moon made history at 156 on April 6th when they reached 248,655 miles from Earth. It's passing the furthest distance ever travelled by humans, a record previously set by Apollo 13 in 1970. The crew members are scheduled to splash down off the coast of San Diego approximately Friday, April 10. So that's from the April 6 to 10. So that's this in space for at least 4 days, and then they were in space long before that, weren't they? How does it begin? Prepares cabin for lunar. So these are some highlights. Cabin for lunar flyby, deep space flying, lunar flyby prep. Crew completes manual pilot and demonstration. Crew starts day with suit demo. Suits ready for lunar flyby. Correction burn. So a number of different things. That's what's happening on that part of the NASA website. I think I just went straight to the live. There's some images here, and that is obviously an old school image. But so they've used the term Earth set. So obviously we're familiar with sunset, where the sun is kind of ducking lower on the horizon, and conversely, a sunrise is when the sun is coming up and going high above the horizon. But here you've got a situation where, because I think it's the Orion spaceship, this is 6:41 p.m. on April 6/26, they are seeing an Earth set, and that means that the Earth is dropping down. And I'm no big scientist or anything like that, but Earth is dropping down below the horizon. Now I'm gonna make this point, okay? For me, I think that the world is a globe. I think space exists just for the avoidance of doubt. And I do think that man has gone to the moon at some point, or gone quite, I do see that. I think where the issue is when you have images that are digital. I think because people have seen the films and they've seen what ability is, even with AI now, it does leave a lot of doubt in people's minds. But my thing with the Earth is flat. I used to have long running conversations about this stuff just for entertainment on Clubhouse audio app, and a main for people who used to say, "Oh, the Earth is flat," I just used to say, "Well, you can't see the polar star from the southern hemisphere. Show me a picture, or show me evidence that you can." And no was, but he's ever to. And the problem I have as well is that often people will, when backed in the corner, they'll just lie. They just make things up, or they just won't try to understand an argument you're making. But on the other side of things, in terms of NASA, whatever, with when the image is digital, or if it's just that if people can't go and see for themselves, they may well doubt what's happening. And some people believe that the whole space, we're in the firmament because of, if you're from Abrahamic traditions, the firmament, because it's referred to in the Bible, etc. They think that, well, you can't leave the firmament. We're in this kind of half disc type thing on a flat plane or whatever it is, and they're relying on that as their evidence. As I say, there's all sorts of scientific experiments you can do. Even with, I talk about horizons, you can look at, you can measure, you can see the ship dipping below the horizon, and they might introduce an argument and say, well, what you're seeing is refraction, the light is refracting and so forth. But you even taking into account refraction, you the ship is clearly going down in front, because if you stay in the same spot, the ship is no longer there if the longer you stay into an evening. So yeah, that doesn't quite work. And that's why I could never be a flat earther, because it makes no sense. And that's the other problem. I'll never forget when I was having one of these discussions, and they said that one of the rockets that was sent up, it hit the firmament and then started to fall back down. When you asked them, well, okay then, if that's the case, and their concept of a flat Earth was that the sun and the moon are a similar size, and they're one of them said to me that the sun is no longer than 30 miles across or something, and it's within a dome. So I said, okay, all right, if that's the case, how comes when you say that rocket hit the firmament, when you look at the cameras all around that rocket, how comes we can't see this small sun that you're referring to? They just simply didn't have any answers for it, for what I was saying. They had no response. Now, it's going to be very hard to convince somebody who has a dogmatic view of not trusting government, which I do understand why people may not choose to do so. I completely understand. Power can corrupt and has corrupted in the past, so I understand that. But when they do not take on board scientific proof, and they don't do experiments themselves, and they don't look at things like, so they'll say, for example, that the space station and any of these space things, I heard it even recently with this, they said that the rocket that went up was full of helium. So it's basically a balloon. So they're saying that space, somebody actually said it, I read that comment, that somebody said that this rocket, this Artemis 2 that went up, was a balloon filled with helium. Somebody actually said that, can you believe it? Now, when people are making, so I've come to the point when I don't even bother to respond. I don't really argue, because it's a waste of time. Because if you're saying it's, look, the amount of images, look, if you looked Artemis from an aeroplane, the amount of people who saw it hit launch, that there's no way that thing that was going up at that speed was a balloon filled with helium. It defies any sort of sense or science to make a statement like that, and that's what some people believe. So that's the moon skeptics. Now, as I say, I didn't go around the moon as these 4 astronauts did. Okay, so from that perspective, yes, you got all these different types of images taken from planes off the rocket launch. There's no way that's a balloon filled with helium. Please, there's no way. There's no way. A balloon filled with helium does not interact with the atmosphere and environment like that. So that makes no sense. So they clearly went somewhere. They clearly went outside of Earth, and they went towards the moon. I'm prepared to accept that. This is what the trajectory was apparently. It's from the Irish Times. Big them up. So they used the Earth as a slingshot, and they also used the moon as a slingshot. So they start off here from Cape Canaveral. Is it 50? Is it that way? What's one? What's number 1? 1 second. Yeah, no, sorry, forgive me here. Cape Canaveral 1, 2. Let me see. I'm just make sure that you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so it takes off. It kind of cuts around the Earth there, and it goes round once, and then it kind of set off on the journey across that sort of, what's it, 245,000 mile expanse of space. And it goes round, and then that's the furthest bit. And all the time it's using gravity, so you're constantly falling. You're using I don't know, different calculations to ensure that you don't fall, but you use it to your advantage. And they did say actually one point they did feel they were falling at one point, but then they shot back out into space, and that's the whole point of how the calculation works. And then they're coming back. So I think they're if Tuesday, that's 2 days of they said they come back on the 10th to San Diego, I think it was. They'll come back, and then they'll just kind of, it's going to be balloons, not balloons, what do you call these things, parachutes on the vessel as it approaches back. Yeah, so I mean, let me know in the comments below. So I'm going to ask a series of questions. So do you think man went to the moon and landed on the moon in the 70s or 60s or whenever? Do you think that happened? What's your views on this Artemis 2 mission? Just your general views, and generally, I don't know, if there's any doubters, do set out 10 reasons why they didn't actually go around the moon and come back. Some say, why is it taking 50 years? Now, I'll be honest with you, maybe it's my own ignorance, but I don't quite understand. I heard somebody present the argument that they lost the methodology, or the people who were working on it at the time, because of what was in their brains, because they're no longer with us, some of those people. For the last 50 years, they've been unable to replicate what it took man to go to the moon. And there are some who argue, it's a quite reasonable argument, that they pretended, well, I say reasonable, if when you're looking at sort of first mover or winning a war on technology, but some people argue that they pretended to go to the moon and landed on the moon to show that their rocket technology was more efficient than the Russians during the Cold War. Now, I kind of understand that argument, because you want to be first, but then the converse argument to it is that if that's the case, then why are Russians not disbelieving that it happened, and why subsequently there are mirrors on the moon that you can point lasers to. Now, it's not, you can't just take out a laser and point it there, but there are, you can go to certain laser sites or whatever to interact with stuff that they left on the moon. And then it said that India and some other countries have photographed the vessels that were left on the moon in the 70s or whenever it was. I think 1972. I think it's 1972 anyway. And then the counter to that is people who believe that there's a conspiracy and that it's not really happening, is that all the governments are in league with each other. That is an argument, that's another argument that is run. Well, there is, I mean, to be fair, there is some organisation, there is some networking between governments. That's most definitely. I mean, I don't know whether it is to the extent that these people are suggesting that they would, all these governments would create a myth of space. But the problem is there's no clear dichotomy in the way that some of these arguments are presented by flat earthers and some conspiracy theories, because they will make that point, but then in society they will still interact with medical services. They'll still just play a part as citizens rather than. So they essentially recognise the governments, they recognise the systems, and they kind of get on with it. But then they have these thoughts about how governments work with each other, so and so forth. So, look, I've done science, not at this level, very low level myself, but look, we fly airplanes across the earth every day. We can see some of the military capabilities that we've seen. We've seen jetpacks. Look, they had jetpacks for even humans to fly, like kind of jets and jetpacks in the 70s. Like a lot of the in fact, I studied history. A lot of the actual rocket technology has been developed from how should I put it? From technology that's been either exchanged or taken over as a result of the First World War and then the Second World War, in terms of what the Germans had at the time. A lot of those German scientists actually came and worked in the US, and some of that rocket technology was shared. So there's a lot's gone on. Another angle to this, actually, let me just point on this, is that there was that interview with Barack Obama this year. He later clarified that he wasn't saying that he'd actually seen evidence of aliens himself, but he couldn't discount it. But is it possible? I think Trump said that he might even reveal. What the USA government has in relation to alien technology. I mean, there's a possibility. I'm prepared to accept there's a possibility that some of the technology that's even probably gotten us to the moon or whatever is, I don't know. Maybe some of it's alien. Who knows? Because a lot of stuff is top secret. And I've got this thought. I'm gonna put this out there as I end this video. Look, a lot of stuff is covered by national security. Okay. Now, look, we're told the Artemis is being funded by the USA government. Donald Trump I think he congratulated them today for making that far and what they've done for humanity. Is it possible, it's a question, is it possible that there are some tasks that haven't been revealed to the public? I think it's very, very probable that all the that they may not be sharing all the experiments that they're doing with us. That is probable, because some things are subject to national security and they might not be released until in 50 years time or whenever it is. So what are your thoughts on that? But as I say, put all your arguments about this in the comments below. But yeah, Artemis 2, they're on their way back, and they've gone to the moon, baby. They've gone to the moon and come back, man. They've gone to the moon and come back. Anyway, please make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me see. Let's hear. Hopefully, no music.
Humans to the moon, and we're gonna have humans in low Earth orbit. That is awesome.
Did a NASA astronaut just admit that we've never been to the moon before?
Yeah. That's the other thing that I noticed. They some jump on words, and don't listen to the whole sentence or comprehension. I must say, look, I'm going to be quite frank with you. Some of the footage.
Proceeded. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Burn away, Houston. That's your good.
All right, look. Maybe because I'm younger or whatever it is, but I can't lie. Some of the footage from the 70s looks very mad to me. It's not very for me, because of maybe I'm used to all sorts of different technology. Some of the stuff that I've seen doesn't look particularly sophisticated, so I can see why it's gonna draw in a number of skeptics. I can see it. Because it's not, especially when the movies you've seen, I can see how it draws in skeptics, because it's very rudimentary, and some of the stuff does look like things that you'd be able, in terms of how it's presented, things that you'd be able to replicate in a film studio. So I do understand why you have people who are skeptical. I'll be quite frank, I do understand it. But the problem that I have is that the people who are skeptical, and I've spoken to loads of them. I'll be honest, I've spoken to loads of them. The people who are skeptical never present any credible alternatives, because that is part of a scientific approach as well. If you're going to say something, you can't just say no, and not have any intelligent response. And that's where I think they fall apart. And because I found that a lot of them are willing to lie, I found that a lot of people are grifting as well. It's actually an art where people will create a community behind them around a particular conspiracy, and where it all falls apart for me is where they try to sell stuff to that community. So the whole point of you, if you're, you know, on a particular point and you're sticking to it, that's fine. But when I see that you're trying to sell, look, people got to make a living, but when I see that your focus ultimately is to actually sell goods and services and whatever it is, then I look at you with the side eye. I'll be honest with you, I look at you with the side eye. Let's see what this person says.
What it would take.
Yeah, music. Allow it, please. Allow it, please. Anyway, NASA. That's what they're doing, man. So yeah, that's something that I saw read this week. They said that NASA, if you rearrange the words, rearranges to Satan or something like that when you add it to. I don't know. There's all sorts of conspiracies going on, man. It's all sorts going on. I wonder what even. Yeah, this was the image that really. NASA reveals 20 billion plan to build permanent moon space. I'm going to listen to that. But yeah, this is a magnificent image. So this is a crater, apparently on the moon. It's enormous. So I think something landed there, created that. Or was it an earthquake? Who knows? But whatever this is remarkable. It's completely circular, symmetrical in terms of its circular nature, and then you can see the moon. The Earth in the distance there. Giganton. Right, what's this? So this is where we're moving to Mars, moving to the moon. They need to look after this planet first, I'll be honest, they really do. But let's hear what this person's saying.
The moon base will not appear overnight. We will invest approximately $20 billion over the next 7 years and build it through dozens of missions, working together with commercial and international partners towards a deliberate and achievable.
So let's pause for a second. What do they actually want to do on the moon? Are they saying there's not enough space on Earth, so we have to go to the moon? Are they trying to get resources on the moon, like, I don't know, rocks or whatever it is? Is that what's going on?
Plan. Just as there was Mercury.
I'm just trying to understand it, I'll be honest with you. I'm just trying to understand what the purpose is.
In Gemini before Apollo, there will be an evolutionary path to building humanity's first permanent surface outpost beyond Earth. And we will.
Do you know what it is? Okay, so that is a good reason. That is a good reason for building something, because if something's orbiting something, that means at some points it is going to be closer to the rest of the solar system than us, depending on what position it is. Obviously, if it's going around and at the point that you're travelling off, it's facing the sun, you'll be close to those planets. But I don't think, maybe Mars, but I don't think that they're trying to go to some of the planets nearer the sun. That's not necessarily the safest thing because of heat, but maybe certainly beyond. So I guess maybe the point is to have the moon as a stopping place before moving further out into the solar system, Star Trek style.
We'll take the world along with us as they follow along on the NASA Moonbase website and watch the assembly through lunar relay and observation satellites. At the same time, NASA will never give up its
This is Jared Isaacman speaking.
presence in low Earth orbit. The moon.
So they'll never give up. So where the space station is, and that's the thing. You can actually see the space station with your naked eye, and the response to that is they tell me, "Oh, what we're seeing at the space station is helium." Makes no sense. No sense. They're saying what we're seeing is helium. But equally, some of the photographs that I've seen and videography of space walks travel is curious. I'm gonna say it's curious. It's very curious. I'd expect probably a bit more, but it's not enough for me to say it never happened, personally. And then yes, they do some silly arguments like, oh, who was the film? All right, as much as I don't particularly find this footage very probative for me. It looks as something that you could replicate. I'll be honest, but it may well be what it is. But that aside, then you have people saying, "Oh, you left a cameraman to film." Now that's just a stupid argument, because we know that you can just leave a camera on a stand that you could probably turn on or take the picture with via radio signal. It's just really basic stuff. Like, if I've got a car, a remote control car, since the 80s, 90s, you don't need a string attached to the car to make it do things. You do those things via the antenna, via radio waves. So I'm not sure what waves they use to turn the camera on and off to film. I mean, it might have been put on physically prior to them going in the spacecraft. However, the argument that there was no human person there to film, like selfie sticks don't exist. Space rocket selfie sticks didn't exist. Come on, man, that's not a good argument, is it? But anyway, look. Please make sure you like, share, comment and subscribe. I thought I'd look at this. Do give me, if you're a flat earther, let me know what you think. If you're not a flat earther, let me know. If you're kind of in between, let me know. And yeah, man, they forwarded to the moon. Please make sure you like, share, comment and subscribe. But for now,